What would you say from what you've learned, being in the psychedelic space, now entering in this space and learning more about this CPG level, like are big brands, to David's point, looking at things differently? What would you say is a lot of the misconceptions about it right now, pertaining to the coca leaf in particular? Hey everyone, welcome to our latest TDR Psychedelic Exclusive. I hope you're having a great week. Thanks for checking in. Had a company that went public earlier this week on the CSE that's getting a lot of attention, SPLY Streaming, about their whole business model being an incubator that's investing in the war on drugs because we all know it's broken. Nancy Reagan's been gone for a long time. We need to look at new solutions. So let's welcome back into our podcast advisor to Safe Supply Streaming, Ronan Levy, back to podcast. Good to see you and great seeing you last week in Chicago at the Benzinga conference.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah, it was great seeing you last week. It's exciting times for us as a business and this whole ecosystem.
You guys were like this entourage walking around getting all this attention. And I noticed there's about 2,000 of these safety strip pamphlets that Jeff Bennick, one of the companies you're invested in, put it out in the door, and all 2,000 were gone. So needless to say, there's a lot of buzz circulating around the industry, right?
Absolutely. There's an incredible need, right? Like there's
Yeah.
not just an economic opportunity. There's a massive economic opportunity for sure, but you just have to look at the news at any given point on any given day to see that the war on drugs has failed. We're in the middle of a fentanyl and opioid crisis, and something needs to shift, and it's starting to shift, and we exist to help make that happen.
Yeah, and you would know that better than anyone based on your background. So on our first podcast with you and SETI, you talked about you being the company, an incubator, and how you're going to invest in various companies within the space, which is why we have David Craig on, who's the CEO of one of the companies that you're going to be investing in this space called Harbour Solutions. Good to have you on. How are you?
Excellent. Thanks, Shad. It's nice to be here.
Yes. And kudos to you before we start filming, talking about how you watch all of our podcasts and have nothing but nice things to say. So I appreciate it. And we didn't pay you to say that either.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan. No,
I
I am for
appreciate
sure.
it. So let's dive into, we kind of have an idea of what Safe Supply Streaming is doing and how they're bringing awareness and investing to build the overall infrastructure towards this industry. So let's learn more about Harbour Solutions. This is a company they want to invest in. What is it you do, and why, more importantly, should consumers and government officials and investors, pay attention?
Well, Shad, first of all, my name's David Craig. I'm the CEO of Harbour Solutions Importation Inc. That is our full company name. And we are in the coca leaf business.
Okay.
Yes. So that is a wholly new category that is coming into the market. And really, if we step back a bit, I guess in the 1970s, there was a lot of excitement around the coca leaf and the work that Dr. Andy Weil was doing around the coca leaf and as a health and wellness opportunity similar to psychedelics. And what happened was the war on drugs ultimately threw a wet blanket on all of that, and it kind of went away. So what we're finding now is that there's a resurgence and a renewed interest in coca leaf. So we took a look at that opportunity and very quickly at the beginning assembled a strong team and kind of all of the aspects that we felt were necessary to build a lasting and strong fundamental business. And we essentially what we're doing is we're taking the coca leaf out of the little box that it's been in for 130 years, where Coca-Cola, the only company really that has commercialized coca leaf, has been able to benefit from that over $1 trillion in revenue. And we've broken that little box up.
Okay.
So we are now taking that opportunity and showing other major CPG brands and the nutraceutical industry how to actually commercialize that product, how to find that path to market. We're spending the money. Nobody's ever spent the money on coca leaves because it's been so stigmatized.
So
whereas now,
when you're extracting it, does this look to replace sugar or something similar to that?
so it has a sweetness element to it. So if you do add it to food or beverage, then any sort of bitterness is reduced. So the need for sugar is much lower. There's potentially 30 to 35% less sugar that's required. However, it's not just a sugar or sweetener. It's a flavor ingredient. So similar in Coca-Cola, it's got a very distinct flavor. It's something that is very desirable and it pretty much enhances anything. If you just put it in water, it tastes great. It's a beverage that's quite enjoyable. So there's all kinds of opportunity in flavor, and then in addition to the flavor, there's a biofunctional benefit. So
Okay.
there've been anecdotal for 4,000 years. There's been anecdotal evidence about what the coca leaf does. It's got altitude assists in altitude sickness, reduction of appetite, energy enhancement, and so on. So what we're doing is we're taking that and we are building that out. So as opposed to just anecdotal information about the leaf, we're actually doing real studies about the leaf. So we've already started. We've chosen one of the top 5 universities in Canada, and we've engaged them for a 5-year study on the coca leaf. First step of which is to do a mass spec to understand all the compounds within the coca leaf, and then based on that, see what sort of papers have been written about the coca leaf, and there bound to be a number of them that support those types of attributes.
Ronan, being an advisor, what would you say from what you've learned? Being in the psychedelic space now, entering in this space and learning more about this CPG level, like are big brands, to David's point, looking at things differently? What would you say is a lot of the misconceptions about it right now, pertaining to the coca leaf in particular? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's still early days and there's work to be done to engage CPG brands. But if you look at it, we've seen this story play out twice already in the last 10 years, right? Cannabis was pretty offside and no one was talking about it. And then all the work with CBD, the non-psychoactive
Yeah.
component of cannabis, became of interest. And now literally CBD is everywhere and is a massive, massive market. We saw it again a few years later, a couple of years ago, with functional mushrooms. There was a lot of
Yeah.
interest in functional mushrooms, tied very closely to the rise of interest in psilocybin and psilocybin mushrooms. And this is just the same thing happening again. But with coca leaf, I think the health attributes are well documented, at least on an anecdotal basis, as David mentioned. This has been used for $4,000, 4,000 years, sorry, in South America for a variety of reasons. And there's a lot of interest. We know it works in products. It worked 100 years ago when Coca-Cola started adding coca leaf directly to its products and built a monolith of an industry around it. And they've just been sitting on this little monopoly ever since. And so it's an incredibly exciting time for Harbour to break in and start to change the narrative and introduce this as a functional food, as a supplement, as an ingredient. I think there's an incredible amount of opportunity. And from our lens at Safe Supply, reintroducing coca leaf with the cocaine extracted from it is one of those things that start to re-engage our populace with the conversation around this plant, which has incredible potential benefits, but has been mired in the drug war pretty severely over the last 50 to 100 years. And so we start to re-engage in that conversation a little bit, get people comfortable with the idea, and then when you start talking about making new medicines with it, it's not so shocking, it's not so provocative, and there's collective support to do that kind of work.
So how does one import this? Do you have contracts in play with like various countries? Like, how does that work, David?
So we did our homework and we investigated. We very early on brought on someone, actually boots on the ground in South America. He's the
Okay.
ex-trade commissioner to Colombia, Alvaro Concha, who's there now. And so we started searching around for opportunities, and we found that Peru is actually the only country in the world where production of coca leaves is legal. So at a
Okay.
diplomatic, it's the only country. It's the only country. So at a diplomatic level, we started speaking with them. It's actually a state-run company, so it has to go through government channels. And very early on, we signed an LOI with them. We flew down there in May, met with their entire executive. They toured us around. They have 33,000 registered farms that they collect coca leaves from, and they centralize them in one warehouse. So we toured that warehouse, a huge warehouse with just like masses of dried coca leaf, and we signed that agreement. So we are now their agent for Canada. We have successfully brought
So
in decoconized.
this is legalized in Peru and a contract with the Canadian government too. Is that right?
No, contract with our
With
company. A
with your
contract with our company. So we are the ones, they're agents for Canada. So if you want to buy coca
Wow.
leaves and you want to buy them through this company, then we're the ones to talk to. So we not only has that contract been signed with them, it was ratified by their Congress. So we're in a
Wow.
strong position, and we are. It's the only legal source of coca leaves in the world. So if major CPG brands want to deal with something like coca leaf, certainly you want to start with a place that it's legal to produce and export.
So what's
So
that producing? 33,000 farms. It sounds like a lot when you read it on paper.
33,000 farms. So when we were there, their warehouse had, I believe it was 2,400 tons of dried coca leaf, and
Wow.
they turn that over roughly about 3 times a year.
Okay.
So that's a significant amount of coca leaf. And so in terms of production and what we can do, we can certainly scale to any quantity. It's enough to supply Coca-Cola, so we we should be fine in terms of our ability. If as far as importing it, so this is something that has never been done before. So
Right.
it was probably about, I'm going to say, 3 months ago when we got our first shipment in, and what we had to do is we had to navigate with our customs brokers, with CBSA, Canada Border and Protection Services,
Totally.
or
Yeah.
agency, and understand what was required. We also collaborated with Health Canada to ensure that what we were importing was in fact legal, which we were able to verify. And as such, through our network of steps and logistics that we work through, we're able to successfully legally import decoconized extract into Canada for the first time.
Is
So
that
just
only
last Monday,
for Peru though for now, or is like could other companies have contracts in other countries if possible, or no?
I mean, I imagine it's possible. I mean, there is one other competitor in the marketplace who we are up against, and they're bringing their coca leaf out of Colombia.
Colombia. Yep.
So there is another source. However, the only legal source, if you really boil it down, the only legal source is Peru. In Colombia, our competitors have an exemption that they're working with indigenous growers there, where they're able
Gotcha.
to sort of go through a couple of loops. But we are actually getting it straight from the government. A government state-run organization is selling to us, and we figured out the legal channels to bring it into the country.
Huh. Interesting to say the least. Um, when David brings up CPG companies like Coca-Cola, Ronan, have you had conversations like what's been their feedback pertaining to the well, let's face it, they had a background in this industry at one time before the whole war on drugs put, a cold dose of water to the momentum that was building on so many fronts. But now that we're in 2023, like have we had conversations with CPG companies? Like, how are they viewing this?
Well, I think that's a question better for David as opposed to me. But what I can say, and David will go in more depth, is yes, we've been having conversations, and we're also bringing together some people with very impressive backgrounds in the CPG industry who are getting on board and excited by the potential of this. So David,
Interesting.
why don't you cover that?
Yeah, so that is a good question, and I'll go back to the fact that we're creating a path to market. So in order for these large brands to be able to do business with coca leaves, they need to understand how to get it from the field
Yep.
onto the shelves at Loblaws,
Yep.
and so we are providing them with that path so that they can do that. Part of our success is the people that we've onboarded. So I'll go into a little bit of detail. We onboarded the ex national sales director for PepsiCo, Bill Schrader.
Okay.
So that gives us obviously some insights as to major beverage brands and the criteria that they use to select products that they're going to invest in and roll out. We also onboarded the ex CFO of Loblaws, Steve Smith. So it's a $13.7 billion grocery store chain. So with those types of insights,
So
again, we can navigate.
two people that understand store shelves inside and out.
Exactly, and I mean it's such a huge asset and an opportunity for us to present to these major brands in a way that they would expect, with
Yeah.
all of the data and all of the support for the appetite of a product like this in the marketplace.
So you basically have full authorization, legalization through the country of Peru. All parameters met, obviously, to be the main importer from Peru here in Canada. that's coinciding with the government and Health Canada. Being a legal entity in Peru, does that solve, I guess, a lot of questions? Like, is there any concerns in South America with like the drug cartel and how things are operated pertaining to that?
I mean that is something that we stay completely away from. The illegal part of the coca leaf business is that's an issue that we don't even want to cross into. So
Yeah.
we are not dealing with anybody who has anything to do with any of that, whether that is being you know sort of addressed or dealt with in a way where I don't know, it's becoming more under control. That again is out of our purview. So we are just dealing with the legal source. And there, of course, there are illegal sources. We all know that the business opportunity in coca leaves is huge. So I don't think those are going to go away, but we're not crossing over into those waters at all.
Yeah, of course. I think if anything, when it comes to overall execution, was more I was factoring in. But when you look at the importing into Canada, like what's your total addressable market when you look at in a genre, an era of consumers that's so fixated on health?
Well, so the addressable market in food and beverage is over $1 trillion. In terms of nutraceutical and supplement, we're looking at about a $50 billion addressable market in North America, and so we have different verticals that we are pursuing. And as I said, CPG is certainly a big one. We have some other avenues that we're working down towards supplements and the nutraceutical side of the plant. So there are, as I said, anecdotal benefits. And as we do the studies to figure out exactly what compounds are in there, we understand that we're going to find the specific compounds and the efficacy that's attached to those. So we see a big opportunity in the supplement category. And there's a lot of conversation that's starting and that's going on around coca leaves and the benefits.
So as
I
you
think
go ahead, Ronan.
Sorry, Shad, I was just going to say, like, yeah, I know David's throwing out some massive numbers there, and sometimes that can be a little bit hard to swallow. But if you think about the therapeutic applications of the coca leaf, just alone, we as David touched on before, there's appetite suppressing effects, and if we've seen
Yeah.
anything from some of the products like Celsius water, the demand for such products is massive. Or look at Ozempic and all the other weight loss products out there. And here's a natural solution. If you think about it as potentially aiding with concentration and focus, I mean, just look at Adderall and all the other pharmaceutical products that are out there.
Yeah.
So these numbers seem absurdly large, but when you break it down to its functional benefits, it actually becomes much more reasonable. And we do believe that there's application again. The evidence is there, it's anecdotal, and we're going to be doing the work to translate that from anecdotal into clinical, but then it's going to be there, and the market, I think, is going to grow. And the other piece of the equation is, Harbour's not specifically focused on this, but the deal that is with the legal provider in Peru, what we purchase is the coca leaf. They do the processing and they remove the cocaine and the alkaloids
Well
that may
fed.
introduce schedule questions to it and import the decoconized part of the product, which is what Harbour's going to be focused on. But that means there's a lot of API that's available to put into the market, either through drug development efforts, drug discovery efforts. I mean, cocaine, and most people don't know this, but cocaine is actually used in the pharmaceutical industry already
know.
in a few different applications. And so there's a lot of excitement that can potentially burgeon out of that as well. And that's what we're looking at from Safe Supply's perspective as well.
But the CPG landscape seems to be the most lucrative short-term opportunity, does it not?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's not many barriers for us to get in there, but there are barriers for competitors to get into it because of the nature of the relationship we've struck with the Peruvian government. So Harbour is sitting very well in this burgeoning opportunity.
So as you look to invest in various companies like Harbour, so what's next steps? Do you plan to go public, David, in a few months, or like what's that look like?
Yes, we do. Yes, so we have come to where we are pretty quickly. So we started our business just at the beginning of this year. We seeded our company. We had a friends and family round, quite successful, that we've closed out. We now have a Reg D crowdfunding round
Yep.
in the United States for accredited investors, which will be running for probably about the next 2 months. And we have a planned RTO to go public in 2024 Q1.
Gotcha. Times are changing, though. I definitely think, like, just when you think from an addiction, mental health perspective, um, we're in the 21st century now. It's time for change, right? And stuff that has had a perception and paraphernalia for the longest time, you suddenly look under the stone and there's a totally different outlook on what this could potentially benefit, not only from addiction, mental health, but even from a CPG standpoint, where, like you said, it's how many diabetics are there right now, like in our society? And you look at health issues, and we've got this whole genre, or this, I should keep saying the word genre, but this whole era of low fat foods, but we're injecting it with so much sugar, which actually is a lot worse for you. But we live in a society now where people do so much homework and study on what they're consuming on a daily basis, and that's not going to change, right?
Go ahead, Ronan. You take that one.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the trend towards more natural, functional foods, nature
Yeah.
has provided us with a lot of gifts out there. Not to go too off the hippie deep end, but like there's some wonderful plants that we've left out of our diet, of our pharmacies for a long, long time, and that's shifting, and it's a wonderful thing because I think it's going to improve our lives and the quality of our lives
Well, look at even
significantly.
product or beverages. Like Jake and Logan Paul just launched Prime. It's everywhere. Every kid's consuming it. You look on the side, there's more sugar in it than I think Pepsi and Gatorade combined. But,
Right.
if you can deliver a product like that, and most CPG companies like the Coca-Colas of the world that are believing in the obviously process and what you guys are trying to do, it enlightens you on what this whole landscape could look like when it comes to big brand products and how they could tweak their overall approach and how they produce things in the future, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, healthier. Like I mean, the options with coca leaf are tremendous. So there is the sweetening aspect. So not a need for so much sugar. There's the potential of energy creation without the introduction of caffeine. There's so many different opportunities. I mean, one of the things, like, so putting ingredients into products, biofunctional ingredients into products. As an example, imagine a protein bar that you take that has an appetite suppressant. You eat it in the morning, and
Yeah.
you don't need to eat anything until dinner. So that's the type of thing that we are working on, and the type of products and the addressable market that we're
So it could
moving
help with weight
towards.
loss as well, is what you're thinking?
Of course, absolutely, yes.
Wow. World is
I was
changing
just reading
fast,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah, I was just reading that there's evidence to suggest that the coca leaf can help manage blood sugar levels, so manage blood glucose, both up and down, as well as gastrointestinal improvement. Apparently,
That's huge.
it helps with constipation as well as diarrhea, which is seemingly
Imagine
incomprehensible from a modern pharmaceutical perspective. But when you think about, much like cannabis, there's a number of different actives involved in it. It makes sense, and the body responds accordingly to what it
Sign
needs.
me up at 47, man. Right?
Yeah, no kidding. Eh?
This is interesting though. So right now I would say, like, as far as, companies within the space, is there a lot of competitors right now? Is there, like I said, with the safety strips, the other company you're investing in, Jeff was outlining how it's kind of like a first mover advantage, especially as we're opening up the door, this new industry of like the companies you're investing in. But does the same apply with regards to Harbour, Ronan?
Yeah, Harbour is definitely at the forefront of the industry and has a first mover advantage. But that's also part of the thesis of what we're doing with Safe Supply as an entity, is because we're investing across the ecosystem, we can leverage, our investments, our resources, our marketing, our awareness, our knowledge base, our networks to help all of these companies work together. And that's what's really exciting. So Jeff's company, David's companies, there's more coming. And they're just going to get the benefit of being part of our ecosystem as we move up. And all of them are, if not first movers, very early movers
Right.
that will leverage the success of the others.
Yeah, I think this whole industry is going to be a complete shock and different education on where we look at things and how we look at things the next couple of years. Portugal, Switzerland now, California has a vote on, decriminalizing drugs. Vancouver, Oregon, like it's Toronto. I've even heard rumors that they could decriminalize drugs. Like it's time for change. And I think as you start to see MAPS data with MDMA, where MDMA is now viewed as a cure for, not a cure, but helps with PTSD versus an actual street drug, you start to see how the older generation gets older and you bring in newer generations that actually want to address the issue and get real about it and come up with answers and solutions. And oh, by the way, while you're doing it, we could see CBG companies starting to tweak, obviously, their whole business model as we enter in further into 2020, 30, and what consumers want to eat and what they want to put into their body. So it's interesting.
The one thing I would say is, I'm just going to correct you on that. It's not time for change. It is changing.
Yeah.
It's happening right now. We're not waiting for it. It's happening.
Good point. David, Rowan, appreciate the time. Let's keep in touch, and congrats on going public this week on the CSE under the ticker symbol SPLY. Should say Safe Supply Streaming. Congrats, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you, Chad. Thank you.
So what'd you all think of the interview? Did you like what we recorded with our guests? Then leave a comment below and let us know what you thought of it. And if there's any more questions you want us to ask, as usual, share this video with your network. Click on that bell for all notifications. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.